getting scammed. Brandon, you've gotten scammed. I've gotten scammed. We're going to talk about some of the industry's dirty little secrets in regards to protein, amino acids, and some manipulation that is essentially done to scam you out of your money, to create a product that looks like it's more than it is. And this has been going on for quite some time. It has to do with some outdated tests for protein and how those can be used and manipulated. Even though there's better tests today, kind of the standard is still a certain way in what's used for nutrition labels. As we dive into what we want to show you though is what to look for so that you can read the labels and know when this is happening or when it's not. And so that's an important thing, not just disclosing the dirty little secrets, but let's look at your product and let's see what it is. So Brandon, you want to dive into what is protein spiking?
Absolutely. So protein spiking is adding in extra free-form amino acids, and some really common ones that are used to manipulate the results of protein within supplements is going to be taurine, glycine, glutamine, and also creatine as well. And creatine is actually another really big one that we'll get into here in just a second. But the big question is, why the hell would a company do this? And the answer is fairly obvious. Increased profits. Whey protein concentrate has gone up continuously in price. Since 2009, it's doubled in price, and it usually ranges from $1.75 to $2 per pound right now. It doesn't seem like it's going down in price anytime soon.
Actually, it's going to go up significantly over this next year. So if your protein, if you're used to paying a certain amount, be prepared. It is going up significantly this year as we see changes to the global supply chain. I know what's going on. So you may actually see more of this, what we're talking about, going on as people try to remove the more expensive component, the one that you're actually paying for, and make it look like there's more of the stuff, more of it in there on the label. And we're not talking like small amounts, like I'm taking a 20-gram scoop and I'm only getting 19 or 18. We're talking about it could be less than 50%. Your 20-gram scoop could be less than 10 grams, like 8 grams of actual protein in there. This is massive. So let's talk through how that happens with the spiking.
Yeah, that's why it's fantastic timing for this too, because going up, and you're probably going to see more of this as he mentioned. But how do companies get away with this? So measuring protein content isn't very outdated. It shouldn't be, but the way that the FDA is actually doing it right now is extremely outdated. They do it actually using or measuring nitrogen within the content of a protein supplement. So what actually happens, or a few bad examples of the results from this, is with something like creatine. If you add in a gram of creatine to protein, since creatine has those nitrogen bonds very similar to protein, except even more so, it can test as 1.8 grams of protein. So 1 gram of creatine can test as 1.8 grams of protein. Another really bad example here is we look up at glycine. Glycine is about 4 times cheaper than whey protein concentrate, and it can actually test as 1.2 grams of protein using this outdated testing way of testing that they're using right now. So 4 times less. They add a bunch of it in there. It counts as dietary protein, but it tests as more protein than a gram of protein.
It actually acts in your body more like a sugar too. So interesting. And glycine has its place, but not as what you're paying for right there. So
exactly, yeah. So both taurine and glycine are about 4 times cheaper. The price does vary determining a source and looking at the time of year and all that good stuff, but it's a relatively about 4 times cheaper, and some of it can actually test higher than a gram of protein. So there's a lot of room for bolstering results with these kind of metrics, which is extremely unfortunate, and it comes from the FDA's haphazard definition of creatine and also their outdated ways of testing it. And the way they're testing it is actually with methods from as early as the 1800s. This is like the time of the light bulb being created. So it's extremely unfortunate that they're still testing in this manner.
Yeah. Now, I can't believe creatine shows up as a protein, and almost, you say 1.8 protein per, like that's insane. Let alone that it even shows it to begin with, right?
It's crazy. It's unbelievable, especially to this day and age. And the biggest scam that we'll actually talk about today is WPC 34, or whey protein concentrate 34. So whey protein concentrate 80 is a good source of whey protein concentrate, but it's also relatively expensive. So what some companies will do, and this is probably the worst scam out there that they consistently do is instead of whey protein concentrate 80, they'll actually add in whey protein concentrate 34, which actually falls under the exact same labeling. So all they'll say in the ingredient list is whey protein concentrate. You have no idea if it's 80 or 34. So what they'll do is they'll add in whey protein concentrate 34 instead of whey protein concentrate 80, which has significantly less protein and a third the price. And what they'll do is they'll also add a little bit of isolate in there just to make it look good.
Yeah,
and
then put it on the label.
Exactly. Just to say they have it on the label, and then finally, to make up for the severe difference that that whey protein concentrate 34 has compared to whey protein concentrate 80, is they'll do the amino acid fillers, the protein spiking protocol that we talked about up and above. They'll add in a bunch of taurine, a bunch of glycine, a bunch of creatine, and then all of a sudden it has a similar texture, a similar taste, and a similar metrics of a normal protein powder with far less, sometimes less than half the amount of actual dietary protein.
And if you're questioning whether, the validity of what we're talking about, there's a number of ongoing lawsuits right now about this, and some big name companies that have done this. So just because you've got a certain company that is well branded in the public doesn't mean that they may not be doing it. I mean, one of the biggest offenders was Muscle Farm. They're the one, like 40%, 45% is all they actually had in there of the product you were paying for. Like, that's crazy.
Exactly, and a lot of protein companies, you're probably thinking right now, not mine. I go with a big brand. It can't be mine. Mine has a certificate of authenticity, so it can't be mine. But these certificates use the same outdating testing protocol. So even though it has that certificate of authenticity, it seems so valid and it's from a big company, you can still be getting absolutely screwed. And I'll give you a quick example of myself here. Speaking of Muscle Farm, I want to say about 5 to 7 years ago, I was taking it for quite some time, probably over a year, which is very disappointing to think about. This was when I was first getting in the industry and I didn't know about any of this, and I took it for an entire year thinking that when I supplemented with 50 grams of protein a day, I was getting 50 grams of protein per day. But actually came out that it had less than half of what it claimed. For the 40-gram serving that I thought I was getting in protein, I was actually getting 19 grams of actual protein because they were likely using WPC 34, and on top of that, you found a lot of taurine, glycine, and creatine in their ingredient label, which I didn't know at the time, but now makes perfect sense.
So, you kind of hit on it, but how do we avoid this, Brandon? What do we look for on the label so that we can try to detect that we've got a good source?
Fantastic question. So this is a good example right here of what an ingredient label will look like when they are cheating the system a little bit. So as you can see, protein blend, whey protein isolate, yay, that's a good thing. Then they sneak in glutamine peptides, L-leucine. As you can see, there's taurine in there and L-glutamine. These things, these extra free-form amino acids do not need to be in there in any way, shape, or form. And you're probably sitting there looking at the label thinking, those aren't bad for me. Why would it matter? I mean, they're definitely not toxic.
No, if you want to use these things, there's places for these.
Exactly.
Use them. But if they're in here, it's because they're manipulating that label for the cost.
Exactly. Unfortunately, we really have no idea the exact degree to which they're manipulating. All we know is it's happening. So I like to hope for the best, but assume the worst, and just go for a formula like Build Fast formula that has full disclosure labeling. Absolutely full disclosure labeling. You know you're not getting screwed. The ingredient list there is actually what's in the product. So this is what we need to be looking for within a protein product. If you are supplementing with 40, 50, 60 grams of protein per day and you have some really big goals for yourself, you need that exact amount. You need to be hitting your protein goals. It's the most important macronutrient we should be hitting on a day-to-day basis. So if you're falling massively short, that's a real concern.
I mean, you can imagine, I want to hit 250 grams of protein a day. Imagine you're only hitting 125. Right? Obviously not the case, because you should have some real food in your diet, but that shows you how much that is and how impact that can have. It's not just a few grams here and there. And as we're touching on it, I want to put something behind you, but the great essential amino acid scam. All right, so let me touch on this. So there's two others besides protein. People use branched chain amino acids and essential amino acids. Branched chain amino acids are not complete, and actually to work, we need to have whole proteins, those other pieces to complete it. So either in your protein shake or in a meal around this timing where you got the BCAAs in your system. But people pay more money to get their essential amino acids that cover that. It's got all those essential amino acids. It's going to be a complete protein. And so we think, it's great. We're paying 2-3 times the price for some EAAs over our BCAAs, and it's got all that stuff in there. But look at the label. And so what we'll find is, yeah, it's got high doses of, leucine, valine, isoleucine, like all those branched chain amino acids, but it's missing. So the one to look for is called methathione. In almost all of them, you'll see that it's actually dosed, while they've got 5-10 grams of those other items, or even 2 grams, they'll have 200 or less milligrams of methathione, which is actually one of the most critical to complete that formula. And it happens to be the most expensive one and also the hardest to flavor, which also drives up the cost. And you will see it under that, even down to 25 milligrams. I don't want to call out some labels, but you go look and you'll see them at 25 milligrams. They're selling you an essential amino acid that is a branched chain amino acid, okay? And you're paying full price for that. So again, if we talk about like why we have the formulation with Build Fast, that long-lasting window of plasma amino acids through your system, if you feel that you need to have BCAAs or EAAs in your workout, you don't know if you've got a good source, that may be a good approach for you. But if you've got any concern, like having a shake sometime in the 6 hours before your training is going to give you those in your system, those plasma amino acids flowing through your system during your workout, during your recovery windows. So there's a reason we have this formulation as well. And I think, Brandon, you hit on the full disclosure labels. Know what you're getting. I'd love to see that more and more companies, but it's still a smaller part of the industry that are going that direction right now. So really support and thank you to everybody, all the other supplement companies out there doing that. So yeah, these are big things going on that is across the board, and you'll be surprised. Just start pulling labels and you'll see it everywhere.
And people take a lot of pride in supporting local. Let's support ethical. How about that? Let's make supporting ethical more and more popular within the industry, and we'll find that we'll see more and more companies likely doing this. But one more example I want to leave you on is I do have a friend actually that's a bodybuilder, a really good trainer, and he takes a lot of pride in being frugal. And what he does is he commonly takes protein powders that are extremely cheap and convenient. So he takes and this is just a random example, the Walmart special Walmart brand protein, and the GNC and the Muscle Farm, whatever's on sale, basically.
The Costco.
Exactly.
Those are all special blends, by the way, that they make for those companies that even bring the cost down even further. And I'll just point here, start looking at the labels on those ones. Like, I love shopping at those stores.
Oh yeah.
But I do not buy my proteins or supplements from those stores.
Exactly.
Because it's even less of a tier than their standard stuff.
Exactly, and I don't like calling out a bunch of labels here, but I'm also the same way. Most of my clothes, stuff like that, I really value cheap things that last a long time. I don't need to be expensive, but when it comes to protein, that's not the time to do so. And he was actually relying a huge amount of his daily protein goal, up to 70 grams of his daily protein goal, on these variety of different very cheap protein powders. And he thought, it's all the same, right? Very same methodology to my clothing wear or something like that. But this is not the time or place to do that, okay? And when I actually support him, hey man, you need to look at a third-party testing. And what he actually found, great example, every single one he was taking was currently under lawsuits for underdosing, mislabeling, or spiking, as we talked about above. And he was actually finding out that he's getting relatively about half as much as he thought he was getting for a bodybuilder, an elite level one at that. That's extremely disappointing and going to hurt results in a really big way.
Yeah, and it's 70% of his projected daily protein intake.
Yeah.
Massive.
Yeah.
So hopefully there's some useful pieces here for you to be able to detect this stuff, be able to look at what you're looking for. Again, full disclosure labels, great way to go. Really understand your BCAAs, EAAs. We've got posts actually specifically on that if you want to dive into more information on the EAA scam. Chris and Brandon out.